go and see or talk to friends or talk to people, because you're going to know someone, whether it's in your friendship circles or your family circles or your work circles. You're going to know someone who's going ahead, who's succeeding. Ask them who their mentor is. Ask them who their coach is. Like, referrals or people that have worked with other people is a good way to go. So often when I get referrals, that's when I work with people too.
Hey everybody, Chris G, and it's a Titan's Tale, and it's a Thursday, and it's a new episode. And guess what? It's the second time in the last couple of weeks I've talked to somebody from Australia. I'm so lucky because I love their accent, and this is a lot of fun. You're my second person to be from Australia. But Wendy, we're going to talk about Wendy Alexander, and she's from Melbourne, Australia. She's an entrepreneur and going to give us her Titan's Tale today. But please help me welcome Wendy Alexander. Wendy, thanks
Hello
for joining me today.
Hi, Chris. How are you?
I'm good. So
that's good.
Before we get started, but obviously people watching my YouTube channel, that's fine, but people can't see these beautiful pictures behind you. What are those little images?
So they African art. I was born in South Africa, so I come from Africa.
Okay.
And lived there for 20 years before the family migrated to Melbourne, Australia. So I've been in Australia longer than I lived in South Africa. So I'm an Aussie now. I'm a true blue, a true blue Aussie. But I've carried this art with me around the world for years because I got it from a friend, I think a year after I'd arrived in Melbourne. And obviously it means a lot to me because it's from my heritage. And so when I've lived overseas, even the art has always gone with me, and it survived many things, including a fire. So I had some of my other possessions lost in a fire, but somehow the art survived. So it's with me. And this is my actual working space. This is my home office. Mm-hmm. So my African art lives in my home office.
Well, thanks for sharing. Can you tell us a little about your journey, and then I'll get into more specific questions?
Okay, so the journey starts back in Cape Town, South Africa, where I was born, lived there for 20 years. So I lived during the whole apartheid movement, which was all that segregation things going on, probably not all that different to the civil rights movement that everyone knows about in the US. So it's very similar to that. And then migrated with the family at the age of 21 to Australia. And I finished my university degree here in Australia and then began my working life. And the journey of my company and the work that I do actually started out of a very difficult situation. So I was in a relationship probably 2 years after I arrived in Australia. I was in a relationship for probably close to 10 years, but the latter half of that 10 years, things started to go bad in the relationship. And I ended up alone, pregnant at the time, and had to start again. And so I really started the whole career transformation journey from a very desperate situation. For me, it was like, I need to make more money. I'm going to be a single mom. I've got this newborn. And I started to work with recruiters and hiring people, picking their brains on how I could increase my career prospects. And between working with them and writing, I've always loved writing. So I wrote a lot ever since I was a child, especially during those troubling times, wrote a lot of poetry, short stories. I did have a gift with words. So between rewriting my resume a gazillion times and talking to these hiring people and picking their brains for tips and tricks and information on how to improve the career prospects, I ended up creating a little system which I tested out in the market over and over and over again, got many rejections, and then finally landed an interview for a job that was going to increase my income substantially. I didn't get that job, but didn't give up, went for the next one and got the next one. And the next one probably tripled my income, close to tripled my income. And so I realized, I've got a system that works. And then the people around me, and these are colleagues, family, friends, who had seen me come from the rock bottom where I'd lost everything, including my house when the relationship ended up. They came for help because they knew the story, they knew where I'd been, they saw where I'd jumped to quite quickly. And so they came for support. And I had no intention of doing a business, but the business sort of started accidentally because I started to help people with my career coaching systems and my ability to write career profiles. These people started getting similar success to what I got. And so it just kind of grew from there. But it was very much a part-time business because I was working in corporate, and it became a full-time business about 6 years ago when I went through midlife and its challenges.
Well, we'll get into that in just a minute. So tell me, so you had this, and you wouldn't even call it a side hustle. You're actually helping people. Tell me about the day that you decided I need to charge for this.
Look, I'd say the first year, maybe 18 months of me, after I got my success and people started coming to me, I probably did 18 months to 2 years of freebies. So I just used to help the friends and the family and whoever. But then when the colleagues in particular, my work colleagues, started to send their friends and their family to me, I was like, hang on a minute. I was okay. I helped these people because, you know, I'd had some success, and I was grateful that I was able to crack some of my goals and was happy to help other people. But then I was like, hang on a minute. I still had a lot of debt to pay off at that stage because I'd lost the house sold at a loss. And so there was a huge debt. And my daughter's father had walked away and left me with the responsibility. So, and then I was like, hang on a minute, I could actually start to find a way to put extra money onto the debt. And so that was when I started to charge people. And fundamentally, in the beginning, it was really just about the writing side of it. So when I wrote their resumes or their cover letters or their LinkedIn profiles and things like that, I would charge them. But if they wanted tips on interview coaching, I would spend time with them, and I'd often give that away as a giveaway. But I also started to see that the interview coaching was actually probably more valuable because you can have a great resume, great career profile, but if you don't sell yourself in an interview, you don't get the job, even with great documents. And I started to see, and look, it was all about evolving and growing through the business and seeing what really worked well for the clients, what was getting them the best result. And then also some negotiating tips and tricks. I started teaching people on how to ask for the money that they were worth, how to ask for the conditions they wanted to work in. I call it the perks, the working perks. And I started to see people get success from that. And I was like, that's where the value, the real value is, right? And so I started to charge for the interview coaching as well, and the negotiation coaching. And in the end, the business now has its three legs. It's the writing side, excuse me, it's the writing side, and then it's the interview coaching side, and then it's working with people to network and negotiate their way into great jobs, right? So there's three streams of income that come into the business, and sometimes people take all three, and other times they take just the one area, whatever part they feel weakest in. But yeah, it was seeing the value that it started, because here's the thing, even if someone pays, and I'm just going to throw a figure out, even if someone pays $500 or $1,000, if they get a role that's worth $10 or $15 or $20,000 more, the investment is worth it for them. And that's how I started to position it as well, because it's not that easy to ask for money. We also have to work on our own self-esteem, our own mindset, to recognize, to recognize the value we're bringing. So I have certainly had to do that. But once I got comfortable and I started to see and do the numbers and go, well, even if you're paying me $1,000 and I get you a job that's $20,000 more a year, that is a very worthwhile investment for you. And so I got more and more comfortable with charging, you know, what I was worth and what I brought to the clients. But I wouldn't say, you know, if I'm really honest, it wasn't the easiest thing to do in the beginning, because you also, you know, nowadays a label for it, imposter syndrome. You also wonder where you can, you know, if people are really going to see you as the expert. But the thing is, I kept growing in my career. I went from strength to strength to strength, earning big bucks. By the time I finished my corporate career, I was in a very big six-figure income. And the people along the way that I helped were doing the same trajectory. And so it's in evidence, you know, when you're producing the results and you can produce the evidence, people then come more. And after a while, now it's at the stage where people who really want to grow in their career, they don't blink. at the fees. They just like, this is what I need to do. This is an investment
They
to
expect
get.
it.
They expect it. Yeah,
Yeah. So you had a full-time job, right? At the time.
I did. Yes,
And
yes,
you
I was in
started helping
corporate.
people for free. And then
Yeah.
a year or two later, you started charging. How did you balance with your daughter and everything? It was daughter, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. How'd you?
So one of the things, and this is where I taught negotiation, I guess it comes down to strong negotiation. I, throughout my corporate career, worked mostly from home. During the days when it wasn't fashionable to work from home, or it wasn't okay, but I negotiated those deals. So every time I went to the next contract or the next company, when I would sit down with them in an interview, I put that on the table right from the start. I said, I'm a single parent. I have a daughter. I know, because I've done it now for a year or 2 years or 3 years, I know that I can work from home and I can come into the office 1 day a week or 1.5 days a week, run all my meetings during that time, and then do the bulk of the work from home. I said, the evidence is there. And so I asked for it. I pretty much asked for it. And this is what I teach a lot of my clients to do, is like, ask for what you want. Don't be afraid. But here's the other thing. You have to deliver. So I made sure that I always delivered. And in the earlier years of my daughter's life, she was a great baby. She was one of those babies that started sleeping through the night from age 6 weeks, right? So I was fortunate. Blessed by God, knew what I needed at the time. I needed a good baby. The baby slept. So I was able to work. And often so I worked for companies that had international projects and things like that. And sometimes my immediate boss would be traveling overseas, and he would need support from me at about, say, 8 o'clock at night. And I was willing to do that because why? Because the baby was sleeping. I could do it, but I also knew if I was flexible, they were going to be flexible with me, which is exactly what happened. So it comes down to negotiating well, asking for what you want, but also delivering and stepping up when you need to step up, because you need to prove to the company that you're worth that negotiation. And that's what I did in every contract. And so I actually had my corporate career was pretty much run from home. 1 day in the office, maybe 1.5 days in the office, but I ran all of my projects from home. So my daughter was always there. She was in daycare 2 days a week, but most of the time she was with me, and I was flexible. I could spend time with her. I would take lunch breaks and be able to take her for walks at the beach, take her to the park, to have a play in the park, all of that. So I ran because it was very important to me to be a present and available mother, but it was also necessary and important for me to have a good career so that I could actually support the two of us.
I guess before I go on, how old is she today?
She is going to be 27 next month. So
Wow.
she's grown up now. She's a young adult doing her own thing.
Good.
Very successfully too.
So you were successful, obviously, in your corporate life, doing
Yes.
this little side hustle, we call it, another business. And in 2018, for some reason, you decided to go full time into your own business, right? What
Right.
would
Well,
possess you to do that?
Well, it actually wasn't for some reason. The reason was
well,
for a very specific reason. I went through early menopause. So in my head, I was supposed to go through menopause in my 50s. It came when I was 45 years old, and it upended my life, to be quite honest. I'd been through a lot of challenges growing up in South Africa, the challenging relationship, all of that. And I'd come through all of that. For some reason, menopause was the thing that almost took me under, because the physical symptoms was very difficult for me. So I had severe insomnia, started suffering severe anxiety, hot flashes, whatever the symptoms are with menopause. I had every one of them, and I didn't have them in any mild sense. I had them severe in a severe sense.
Extreme.
To the extreme. So I wasn't sleeping. Once the insomnia hit, I wasn't sleeping, and it was actually worse for me during that time than it was when I had a newborn baby. Because as I said, I was one of the lucky ones. My baby started sleeping at 6 weeks. Menopause was a whole different game. And I had no idea what to do with it. And then I'm working in this corporate role. I'm in a, executive position, lots of pressure. I'm not sleeping. I'm having symptoms. There were times when I used to get the hot flashes, those symptoms, I would get severe nausea with that as well. So there was oftentimes I had to dash out of the meeting rooms in corporate, race to the loo and all of that kind of thing. And it was so embarrassing. I didn't know what to do. There was no support either in the workplace. So you couldn't really talk about it to HR because there were no programs that supported women. And it's kind of like a taboo subject. People are talking about it more now, and they're starting to implement programs in the workplace, but they still have a long way to go. And so when I went through that, 8 years ago, 9 years ago, it was intense and it was severe. And that was what catapulted me to make the decision. It's like, I can't do this corporate pressure anymore. But I also I was journaling a lot through that time. And that was where the writing comes in handy again. I was journaling a lot because I was trying to calm my mind. I was trying to make sense of life and what was happening to my body and to my mind. And I was noticing that I just wasn't happy in corporate anymore either. That was the other thing. So there was the severe symptoms of menopause. There was feeling like my work wasn't meaningful anymore. I worked on big projects, big technology projects. I'm not drawn to technology. I see the value of it. I see what we can use it for, but it's not something that inspires me. Helping people and writing, those are the two buttons. Those are my two buttons. Push those two buttons and you get the best out of me.
Right.
And so I was like, how can I combine this? And I already had the business.
Mm-hmm.
I had a business where I was writing resumes for people and I was helping people. And so I just decided I already have something that I get a lot of joy out of doing. I'm doing it less than I need to because I'm working a full-time corporate job. Why don't I switch? And so I made the transition over a period of probably a year to 18 months. Fortunately, because I'd worked these high-powered roles in corporate, I was saving a fair amount of money. And so I could transition into my own business. I had financial backing to do it. And it's one of the things when I work with people, I always say to them, you need to be practical. Don't just leave a good job. Transition, work your way out of it slowly, because if you put yourself under financial pressure, you are never going to be able to succeed in your business because you're going to be worried all the time about how bills get paid, how the mortgage get paid, how the kids' school fees get paid, and so on. And so I don't encourage people to just walk away from something. Like, there are practical steps, there are timeframes that you need to do it over if you want to do it in a way that isn't going to put financial stress on you.
Sure.
So I'm very much a feet on the ground kind of practical kind of girl. And that's the way I transitioned out of corporate into full-time business.
That's a good story. Do you have a team, or do you have people help you?
So my partner and I work the business. He's very good at the marketing side of things. So he does all the marketing. He's still working full-time in corporate, and he does a lot of hiring. He's on big information and communications projects here in Australia. And so I actually get to see firsthand what's still happening in that corporate space, because I pick his brains. He's now the brains that I pick to get what's the latest trends, what's happening in the market space, what is hiring trends. So I'm able to give a lot of people up-to-date information on how to navigate the job application system or transitioning into your careers. But his side gig is managing the marketing side of my business. I'm the face of the business. I do all the coaching and I do all the writing as well. So it's the two of us. It's a two-partner business. Look, I did get someone once to help me with the resume writing side of it, but this person didn't write according to the standard that I like it written. I'm very, very fussy, very meticulous. I like it to be sharp, succinct. I know that hiring people want to see sharp, succinct. Tell me your story quickly, effectively, compellingly. And so I ended up letting that assistant go, and I do it. But what I've done now is I work mostly with mid-level careerists. So that's usually the 45 age plus. They in that level stage, they're earning better money, and they also see the value of investment in growing their careers. So I am able to get the fees out of people easier at that level, and that's my ideal client. So I don't work with young employees. I occasionally work with some graduates, but only the graduates of my clients. So if I've had mid-level careerists work with me and their children are coming through university, coming through high school, they'll often send them to me. And I only work with them because I've worked with their parents before, but that's not my ideal client. I actually work with mid-level careerists who can afford my fees and who are also at the level of maturity where they actually want to grow their career, because you have to be ready for it. You have to want it, because I do have a process and I do give people homework and they have to do networking, all the different things I teach them. And if they aren't going to do that, if it isn't a partnership in growing their career, then I don't work with. But I'm at the point now where I can choose the people I work with as well, right? That's a nice, that's a nice place to be. Not just for the financial success of it, but because fundamentally, I think when you a coach, you want to see your clients get a result.
Mm-hmm.
But you also know that they can only get a result if they work with you. If they come to you and expect you to perform the miracle, it isn't going to happen, right? Because even if I got their documents, career profile to be a glowing profile, they have to go into the interview by themselves. I can coach them, I can practice with them, but I don't get to go with them. They have to walk into that interview room alone, sell themselves alone. And so that's why I make my clients understand right off the bat, we're in partnership, we're in success partnership, and it doesn't happen without the other. Like I do my part and you also have to do your part. So I'm fairly upfront about how it needs to be. I usually have a conversation with any client that comes on board to let them know how I work, so that they know what I expect. You know, and for me, it's like, you have to be ready. You choose it. I don't choose it for you. I give you how it goes and you decide if it's the right fit for you. You know, but the ones who do choose and who do participate, they get success.
You mentioned coaching, and in my notes here, it says that you invested in personal growth and sought mentorship. What kind of personal growth? What did you do over your time?
Okay, so the first lot of this is counseling first, because when I came out of that relationship, I was incredibly damaged emotionally. You know,
With your daughter's
father, correct? Yes.
Okay.
So the first lot of things I invested in was counseling. And that was difficult to do because the money was very tight then. As I said, I had massive debt, but I was like, I did my numbers and I was like, I have to save money and I need to go and put myself through counseling, because emotionally I was incredibly fragile. So counseling was the first lot. And then I started to find the recruiters and the hiring people. Many of them helped me for free, because this is the thing, when you're honest and open with people, they often will step up and try and give you some tips and advice. But I also sought business mentorship in how do I build my confidence? How do I sell myself? How do I speak more confidently? And I would ask the mentors that I chose, I'd ask them what their fees were. I'd look at the sums. I'm like, I can't afford it right now. But then I would be like, okay, how long does that price hold for? And they would say, oh, that's available for the next 12 months. I would save so much sacrifice, right? I was a movie girl. I loved the movies, loved dinners. All of that got sacrificed. So I never went to the movies anymore. There were no dinners out. There were no going out on, celebratory functions or anything like that. And every spare cent I worked towards that goal. And the goal was I need to go and engage with that mentor for 12 months. I would save up for the fees, would pay the fees, and would do the program, whatever the program was, or whatever the coaching, if it was one-to-one coaching. And I think here's a message for a lot of people is that if you really want to change your life, don't ever let finances be an excuse. Work towards it. Like if you don't have the money right now, then prioritize, look at the budgets, look at the spending, and whatever you can save, you save. Birthday money, for me, it was birthday money, it was Christmas money, whatever, and plus whatever other money I was making. when I started to charge for my fees, all of that went back into investing in my own growth, because I could see clearly that there was a lot of growth that needed to be done. First of all, to get over that very painful relationship and all the loss that came with that. Second of all, I wanted to be an example to my daughter. I never wanted to be a victim in life, even though it was a challenging time. I never wanted to be a single parent statistic and a victim in life. I wanted to succeed, and I wanted to be an example to my daughter, because what I realized was that she was watching me, and I could tell her all that I wanted to tell her, but it was going to be more effective if I showed her, right? And so for me, it was about always being that example to her, never asking of her what I wasn't ever going to do myself, because sometimes as parents, we can say to our kids, do this, do that, but then we're not doing it for ourselves, right? And I was like, no, I want her to see through my life that you don't have to, that even when things go really bad and you think that you're at the end of your tether, you can still get up and move forward and find the resources to help you. So that's what that was all about, really.
For my listeners, do you have any suggestions on how to find that right mentor for them?
Look, I think it's important to probably have a conversation with someone. And I think if coaches don't offer you a few minutes of their time when you're trying to feel them out, then they're probably not the right coach for you, right? Because I know sometimes people can be all about, well, every minute of my time costs money. Well, money shouldn't be the only factor driving. So for me, it's really important to get my client the result, which is why I choose the people that I work with, because I have had people, and I give people time. I give people time before they come work with me. I give them time. I give them 15 minutes, 20 minutes, sometimes 30 minutes. We have a chat. I ask them what their goals are. I ask specific questions about what they've done so far to try and change life, because I want to see if they've even made any moves on their own, right? Because if someone isn't ready or they're not willing, they're going to be wasting their time, your time, and their money. And at the end of the day, that doesn't make a good coaching success story, right? That's what I've seen. And so I say to people, go and see, or talk to friends, or talk to people, because you're going to know someone, whether it's in your friendship circles or your family circles or your work circles. You're going to know someone who's going ahead, who's succeeding. Ask them who their mentor is. Ask them who their coach is. Like referrals or people that have worked with other people is a good way to go. So often when I get referrals, that's when I work with people too. People that I've worked with then send their friend and family, and I'm like, well, you've worked with me, so you know how I work. You would have told them how I work. But do your due diligence and do your research. Don't just go for any coach, and also when you have a conversation with someone, you're going to be able to feel if the vibe is right between you and that coach.
You got to click.
Because sometimes, you got to click. You have to have, you can find the best coach. You can go work with a Tony Robbins, for example, but he may not be the right coach for you. Even though he's got that world-renowned fame and all of that, he still might not be the right coach for you. So it's up to you to find the person that you click with, and that means you probably have to make more than a half a dozen phone calls and have a conversation with more than a half a dozen people. But you're going to know, trust you, because here's the other thing, where your empowerment starts to happen before you even start coaching is for you to trust your own intuition and your own voice. What is your intuition saying? Is it saying this I can feel this coach is going to be right for me? If you have reservations, explore why you're feeling reserved about it. Because you are going to invest money with a coach, and you want that to be a good vibration between you and your coach, and you also want a coach who's going to be strong enough to hold you accountable, because if nobody holds you accountable, well, that's a lot of money down the drain after
Absolutely.
6 months or 12 months or 2 years. It's a lot of money down the drain. So
if you're not willing to do what they tell you to,
correct,
you're wasting your money, and it really comes down to you taking action. Was talking about
Exactly.
the difference between a coach and a consultant. And somebody said, well, a consultant, I'm going to tell you what to do, and you're responsible for going and doing it. A coach holds you responsible too. Don't get me wrong, and they're kind of there to cheer you on. But there's a little bit of difference between coach and consult. Because somebody asked me, what do you want to be? I said, well, I see them both being the same. But at the end of the day, a consultant is, here's what needs to happen. And you can
Yes,
choose to do it or don't choose to do it. A coach is, I'm going to ask you where you're at and so forth. And maybe it's a combination of both. But you, when at the end of the day, whether you have a coach or a consultant, if you're not doing the work yourself, you're not going to succeed.
that's right. You're not going to succeed. In my process, I give homework, and sometimes the homework might be as simple, for example, as they'll say, "Oh, I'm not. My boss doesn't know half of what I do." Right? So then I'll go, "Okay, your homework for this week is you need to go book a coffee with your boss." And then I say to them, "You don't book your next session with me until you've had that coffee with your boss, because I want to know how that went. I want to know what you spoke about. I want to know how you frame things, and can I help you frame it different for the next meeting? If you want to gain visibility, you want to let your boss know who you are and the work that you do." And I have had clients who have not booked the coffee with the boss. And I'm like, well, we don't do our next session until you book that coffee with the boss and until you've had that
conversation.
Yeah, because you want them to succeed. People don't realize if they do that one small action, it might be a tiny action. You've had the 20-minute coffee with the boss, but people don't realize how much it boosts their confidence when they actually do it. And then they come back to the meeting, the session with me, the next session, and then we discuss it. And they said, "Oh, he was actually really great, or she was really great, or I was really nervous." And then I say, "Okay, well, what did you want them to know about you? Did you let them know that thing about you?" "Oh no, we just spoke about," and because sometimes I also tell them, get into the boss's world, because you might think the boss is not noticing you or not giving you an opportunity, but do you even know in the boss's world if they are preoccupied with other things? Because they're human too. They could have family dramas, or dog could have died, or any kinds of things could have happened, and you just making an assumption about someone without actually finding out. And many of my clients who've gone to have that initial coffee with the boss find that there's a great human being behind that person, and they end up developing great friendships, and suddenly the opportunities are growing, and they're working collaboratively together, and they have this better relationship, and then they're getting promotions, and it's all. The only thing that stopped them in the beginning was getting to actually know the boss. They made assumptions that the boss didn't want to give them a chance, which wasn't the case. Sure. Right? So for me, I get so firm with my clients that it's like, don't book the next session until you've done the homework.
And that's a strong coach or consultant, whatever you want to call yourself. I mean, you are saying this is the deal, and we're not going to succeed, or you're not going to succeed unless you do it. So don't come back to me until we're ready. Knowing what you know today, would you have made the switch to get out of the corporate world before you went through menopause?
Probably. I think I should have.
Yeah.
When I look back on myself and my personality, I've always been a workaholic. So part of going, because I entered a new partnership when my daughter was about 11, 12 years old, and we've been together for about 15 years now.
And your partnership, you mean another
relationship. Another relationship. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So he's my business partner. He's the one that I said does the marketing.
Right,
he's also my romantic partner.
Sure.
And there was enough security, enough whatever, probably before menopause, for me to actually exit corporate and go and do what I really wanted to do, which was this job full time. But there was certain patterns within me, and the biggest one was the workaholism that I had. Always been a workaholic, always worked hard, always lived with the mindset for many years that I had to keep at it to get the success. Now I had the success in corporate, I was building success in my side business, but still kept pushing and driving myself. And so when I look back now with hindsight, I probably should have exited corporate before menopause. I probably wouldn't have gone through such a hard time during menopause, because it was the combination of corporate stress plus physical symptoms and menopausal stress. that ended up really pushing me and forcing me in a way to make that decision. So, yeah, I think we can, as entrepreneurs, we can push too hard. We can start too late. I don't think it's ever too late. I think if you want to do your passion or you want to do your pet project or the thing that brings you joy, it is never too late. You know, one of my favorite authors, Bryce Courtney, wrote his first major novel at age 57 and became a best-selling author until he died at age 76 or 78, I think he died. He's a South African author, and his first book, The Power of One, became an international success, and he wrote that book at age 57. So it's never too late to start if you want any success in life. Louise Hay, another favorite of mine, started it in her 80s, right? Or late, no, I think it was late 60s, 70s that she started her publishing company and continued that until she died in her 90s, right? So we can find our passion projects or our purposeful and meaningful work at any stage. But I also think sometimes we need to take an assessment of life. And if you're no longer happy, and if you find that you're not happy earlier in life, you know, that no matter what you're doing, you might even be earning bucket loads of money, but there isn't that contentment, you're feeling pulled and pushed all the time, then pause and do the evaluation of yourself and go, you know, what is it that I really need to be doing to be happy? Because the sooner you start that journey, the better for you and probably everyone else around you. I started late. I will own that and say that I should have moved into my full-time business probably at the age of 40, maybe even, because that was when I started to feel the discontent.
Yeah.
And then pushed for another 5 years and then got slammed with menopause. And then it forced me pretty much, you know, because sometimes you'll get the Mack truck and it'll come and slam you and say, hey, I'm trying to talk to you. Pay attention, you know.
I have listeners that are entrepreneurs, and some obviously have corporate jobs, considering different things, whether we increase their different positions or to get out. But how would someone contact you, Wendy, to use your services?
So the best way to contact me is on my website, which is happycareerhub.com, or they can find me on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is where I do a lot of my posting, and I do a lot of free tips and tricks and all of that. And my handle at LinkedIn is Wendy A. Alexander. I couldn't get Wendy Alexander, so I had to put my initial in between my first name and my surname. So it's Wendy A. Alexander on LinkedIn, and that's where people will find a lot of my free work. I also post daily. If it's not an article post, it's a video post, just giving people tips and tricks on how to create balance in their career, how to negotiate, how to handle the interview nerves if they're going for interview nerves. Because sometimes, even if you're going for business and not a job, people are nervous when they're starting new partnerships with others, right? So I provide a lot of tips on how to succeed there. And then LinkedIn is actually where a lot of people then come and work with me, because they follow me there and they see what I do, and they see how I do it. And then people tend to come and see what they can do with me on a one-to-one basis.
Well, as always, I tell people, if you're, driving down the road, doing the laundry, washing dishes, jogging, and you can't get that information, you can always go to titanstale.com, where you can find the information about Wendy. There'll be some links below here as well.
Thank you.
Happycareerhub.com, right?
That's right, happycareerhub.com.
Well, Wendy, I've sure enjoyed our conversation.
Me too.
Across the pond, I guess, the big pond. I know. I'm here in Missouri, so we're right in the middle of the United States. I'm not sure which way I'd go, Pacific or
so you would fly to LA first and then on from there.
So I'm going
to
Pacific.
Melbourne.
Okay, I got
you. Yeah. Unfortunately, there's no direct flights to your part of the world, so you have to go via LA. Because I lived in America myself, and I've traveled many times to the US. So it's always Melbourne to LA, and then LA on to East Coast or wherever. Yeah.
All right. Well, Wendy, thank you. As always, you can find Wendy on our website at titanstale.com. And if you ever want to talk to me and get that free consult or anything like that, you can always go to Chris Gilman at Facebook and Chris Gilman on LinkedIn. Thank you, Wendy, for your time. I sure
Pleasure. It
appreciate
was
it.
wonderful.
It was a good time. Thank you very much. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.